Soothing story time, spooky tales. The Unlit Lighthouse. The creatures of nature had gathered by the Tree of Colours to tell spooky stories. Soon began. A long time ago, there was a small village on the coast called Dealstone. It was nestled in the curve of a steep hill, the highest point of Dealstone, perched right at the very top of the rocky hill where the wind blew its hardest. The hill was filled with little houses all the way down to the shore. Further along the shore from the village there was a rocky outcrop higher than any house in the village. Upon that, years ago, a lighthouse had been built. The lighthouse needed wood to burn in a great fire at the top of the lighthouse, so it could light the way for ships at night, as the sea round the shore was littered with many jagged rocks that would tear away the bow of any ship that hit them. The people of Dealstone were paid to maintain the lighthouse and keep the flame going at night, every night, whatever the weather, for no one knew when a ship would be passing. But the people of Dealstone became greedy and lazy. No ship had sunk for a long time, and they had forgotten the consequences of not lighting the fire at the top of the lighthouse. Not once in living memory had any ship foundered upon the rocks in the crashing sea. The supply of wood was sent as usual for the lighthouse, and the greedy villagers used it to light their own fires in their houses. Then, when it was all used up, they felt angry that they were expected to supply wood for the lighthouse, so the villagers met and decided that they would not bother to light the fire at the top of the lighthouse. The captains could all navigate, and it was a waste of wood and time spent tending the fire. No one wanted the job in bad weather, but they kept the money they were given to tend the lighthouse and didn't tell anyone that they were not lighting the fire. Well, of course, a ship came at night, knowing that there was a lighthouse, expecting to see the light when they were close to the dangerous rocks, but there was no light. The ship smashed into the rocks in a stormy sea, and all on board went down into the cold, deep water. So deep was the water around the rocks that no sign of the ship was to be seen. The villagers did not know about the sunken ship. They were all snug in their beds in their warm houses. All they heard was the sound of the rain on their windows. The next night a mist rolled into the village like waves, faster than anyone had ever seen. It rolled up the hill even to the houses at the very top of the village. All Dealstone hid behind their windows and said they did not want to leave their houses in such thick fog. The mist rolled in again and again, melting away before the next wave, getting higher and higher at the windows till it was as if the houses were under water, then fading away again, leaving only the light of the moon on the wet roads and walls. In the morning it was all talked of, but then forgotten as just another trick of the sea. The next night the mist rolled in like waves again and again, pushing at the houses. The mist rose up and down again at the windows like houses drowning, and then swept back out again, leaving all the roads clear and cold. The air was still. The villagers watched again, but they couldn't see further than their lit windows. The moon was covered by dark clouds. No light shone out from the lighthouse. This time they muttered that the sea was a strange creature, but as it was a cold night, they were better off indoors. The next night, the mist rolled in again in waves. Old Thomas was walking back home with his lantern. Out of the dark came the mist, not in the shape of a wave, but in the shape of a huge dripping hand. The mist dripped from the transparent fingers as they moved silently towards Thomas. Thomas ran home through the clear air in front of the mist, but the mist rolled in over his house as he banged the front door shut. Thomas and his family looked out by their lamplight. Fingers of white mist clawed down the window pane, turning into sparkling streams of cold water flowing down the glass. Thomas grabbed the curtains and drew them shut. None in the house spoke again that night, but all waited by the fire in the hearth, with every lamp on that they had in the house. Only in the morning did they open the curtains and look out. The air was clear and salty as normal. Old Thomas went from house to house, telling what he had seen. Most people didn't want to believe, as what was left of their conscience pricked at them, and they declared that there was nothing they had done wrong that could make the sea angry at them. The next night, no one left their house, all finding an excuse why they could not call on anyone else. When they felt brave enough to look out of the windows, the waves of mist had stopped. In place of the waves were the white, misty shapes of the passengers and crew of the sunken ship moving through the village. At midnight, the shapes drew back from the windows and down to the shore where the villagers' boats were. In the morning, when the villagers were brave enough to venture out, all their boats were smashed. Most of the wood had gone, and there were smouldering ashes up at the top of the lighthouse. Little Emma, a kind child, said, "We should light the beacon in that lighthouse. That's what they want." But the adults refused. They were all too scared. Little Emma went to see old Thomas and asked him to help, but he was too scared. "I'm far too old," he told her, "and you are far too young. Let someone else do it." But that was the cry of every other person. Let someone else do it. So during the day, when the villagers were out talking about the ghosts and desperately trying to think up rituals that would dispel them, little Emma snuck into the woodsheds of some of the villagers to use their firewood for the lighthouse beacon. She was nearly caught twice, but dodged under a fence and over a compost heap. She carried back the wood up the hill, hiding behind the trees and bushes, but left it close to the lighthouse. When night fell, she was put to bed and told not to worry about the ghosts. Little Emma climbed out of the window, taking a box of matches, and set off towards the lighthouse. There were no clouds, and she could see the silvery mist rolling in cold waves towards her by the light of the moon. The mist of waves came closer and turned into the mist of dripping fingers, came closer and turned into the mist of dripping hands, came closer and turned into the mist of dripping arms, came closer and turned into the faces of the passengers and crew, coming nearer and nearer to her with dripping hair and huge eyes. "I'm going to light the beacon," little Emma said quietly to the mist. The mist ghosts stopped just before they reached her, but stayed still in the air in front of her. Then a shape grew up from the mist. It rose up into the shape of a ghostly captain. The misty faces turned back into the misty waves and parted to show the way to the lighthouse. The captain walked beside little Emma to the lighthouse. She climbed up the stairs. At the top, the ghost captain was waiting. The wood she left close to the lighthouse had appeared, piled up at the top of the beacon, ready to light. Little Emma took her matches and she lit the beacon. All night she stayed there, feeding more wood to the fire. Shapes came out of the mist to watch, and some tried to warm their hands at the fire. The villagers looked out and saw the beacon was lit, saw there was a person up there, and saw what little Emma could not see, saw the whole ghost ship moored at the bottom of the lighthouse, its deck level with the sea, the ghosts on board sinking down through the deck and rising up out of the sea to climb the steps of the lighthouse. As the light of dawn came, the captain appeared again to little Emma, and he smiled, and then they all vanished. Many of the villagers ran away as soon as the sun came up, never to return to the village. Others took all the wood they had and piled it up for the beacon at the bottom of the hill. It took a week before any villager but little Emma would go up at night to light the beacon and keep the flame going, for the ghost ship was still there under it. The ghost ship was always there, but only the villagers could see it. Any passing travellers, when told the story, who looked out at night to see, only saw a little mist on the sea in front of the lighthouse, and thought the villagers were superstitious people, but honest people, and very careful that no passing stranger was in any danger, and that they were always very careful about lighting the beacon. A kind people, with a slight look of worry behind the eyes. Little Emma grew up, lived in the village for the rest of her life, and was kind to all till her dying day. The end.